Hello, boys and girls. I am had so many high hopes of being able to spend this St. Patrick's Day with all of you, and I'm sorry it didn't work out that way. I am so prayerful that we will only be parted for just 2 weeks and we can be back together, because I tell you, we are, both Miss Lloyd's class and my class, we are one great big family, and it is difficult, even if it's for our own good, to find ourselves separated, even if it's for just 2 weeks, when it comes unexpected like it did. It's not like where we had the opportunity to celebrate getting out for Christmas, and it was more of a surprise to all of us, so we didn't get to hug and say, see you later. So part of being a student is learning, and you all have been already hard at it this morning with your virtual learning in your Google Classroom. And I'm very, very proud of all of you for jumping on and being so responsible for your education. But I tell you, even though I am getting the lessons together and being able to communicate with you, it's still difficult to be a teacher in solitude, because a person that teaches does so because he or she absolutely loves children, and we love to share learning. And so even though it wasn't required, I just cannot see me not spending a part of my day being able to tell a story with all of you, because you know I enjoy a good story. And so I hope in the next little bit, maybe tomorrow, we can start back with MC Higgins. I wanted to give everybody a good opportunity to be able to get onto computers and understand a little bit better about how to access the lessons before we started on the book that all of us are so engaged in at this point. So I thought for today I would read one of the stories from 3 favorite fairy tales. And one of the reasons I love this book so much over the years is the fact that it has great big colorful pictures. And although we do enjoy being able to visualize a story, there's just something extra about a good fairy tale book that has great big images. And it's always interesting to me how the images that the artist comes up with for these beautiful books is also, we find out it's just exactly what we visualized in our mind, perhaps with some minor changes, but quite often the words, the text are able to show us so much of what the visual world has to offer. And so today the story is Jack and the Beanstalk, and many of you are familiar with the story, but it doesn't hurt to hear it repeated. We see a beautiful picture there of Jack and his mom and a cow, and a beautiful picture of the scenery to give us a good idea of what it looks like where the fictional character of Jack lived. Once upon a time, once we hear that, we know we're beginning a fairy tale. A boy named Jack lived with his mother in a bare little cottage. Now, Jack was good-hearted, but he cared so much more for play than he did for work that his mother was hard put to keep them both fed. One by one she sold all their poor belongings, and at last the time came when they had nothing left but a cow. "We must sell her too, Jack," sighed his mother. "Take her to market, but see that you get a good price, for when that is gone, I don't know how we shall live." Now keep in mind, we have talked about before that quite often when a character's name is Jack, we can expect that Jack is going to do things that typical boys and girls cannot do, because that's how Jack tales are often written for us. So the next picture shows us a man that is now meeting with Jack, and you can see the cow. Again, the scenery, you know now he's not in town. He has ventured, he's not in his rural area, but has ventured into town. Away went Jack, meaning to make a sharp bargain in driving the cow before him, but as he neared the town, he fell in with an old bearded man who admired the cow and offered to buy her. "She's a very fine cow. What will you give me?" asked Jack. "These," said the little old man, and poured out a handful of beans, so shiny and bright colored that Jack could scarcely wait to own them. "Done!" he cried. And without another moment's thought, Jack gave the cow to the old man and went running off with the beans. His mother did not think them wonderful at all. "Jack! Jack!" she cried. Your folly has ruined us at last. Folly meaning the thing that you did that didn't make a whole lot of sense. Bursting into angry tears, she tossed the beans out the window, and poor Jack crept off to bed, feeling both hungry and ashamed. And you can see a picture of Jack, and you can see his mom throwing the beans out the window. But in the morning, when he looked out of the window, Jack leapt out of bed in surprise. The beans had sprouted in the night, and from them had grown an enormous beanstalk. Up and up it went like a great ladder, until its topmost leaves were lost in the clouds. "They were wonderful beans after all," cried Jack, and he was soon out of the door and climbing up that strange beanstalk. Up and up Jack climbed until the houses in the village far below looked like little toy boxes. Soon Jack was up above the clouds. He found himself in a vast barren land with nothing in sight but a great forbidding castle. Being very hungry after his long climb, Jack went straight to the gate to ask for a bite to eat. And you can see below the picture of the village and know he is about the height of a plane taking off. And he's already at the point where he can actually enter into the clouds from this beanstalk. So we can tell it definitely is a fairy tale because it's definitely fiction and things are happening in it that could never possibly happen in real life. A huge woman answered the knock and stared down at him with fear and amazement. "Whoever you are and however you came here," she cried, "you must go away before my husband comes home." Now, Jack was frightened in spite of himself, but he was hungry too. He asked for a crust of bread so earnestly, that means honestly, that the woman took pity on him and led him into her huge house. So pity meaning she felt sorry for him. And you can tell by the looks of them and knowing that Jack is an average sized boy most likely that this must be a giantess. And of course there comes her giant husband. Just as she did, great pounding footsteps came toward the castle. The floor quaked, which means it was shaking. The walls trembled and shook, and the woman's face grew pale. "My husband is coming," she whispered. "My husband is coming," she whispered. Just in the nick of time, she hid Jack in the huge oven. That does not seem wise for Jack. Into the room strode, which means walked by, a huge man, even bigger than the woman and terrible to behold. Behold meaning to see. "Fee, fi, fo, fum," he bellowed as he came. Bellowed means he's speaking very loudly. "I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread." He looked under the table and in all the corners. You can see the house that he lives in, like a castle, which we saw on the other page as well. Just as he reached for the door of the oven, his wife found her voice. Now, does that mean she found her voice and that she had lost it? No, it means that she had not been speaking, perhaps because she was afraid, and now she is able to overcome her fear and speak. "No one is here," she quavered. "To only your good supper that you smell." She quickly set an enormous platter of plump roast geese on the great table, and grumbling to himself, the giant sat down and ate every one of the geese. Big appetite. Then he dragged a huge money bag from under the table. Opening it, he played with the shining coins until he fell asleep in his chair. Now, out of the oven crept Jack. He drew the bag out from under the giant's very nose. Does that mean he drew a picture? No, it means that he pulled it out. He took it out from underneath the table. Out from underneath his nose, Holding it tightly, he was soon out of the castle and safely down the beanstalk. When Jack's mother saw the giant's gold, she could scarcely contain her joy. The two lived in plenty, which means rich, for many months, but at last all the gold was spent. And the little family was poor again. They were not very good with money. Jack went out to the beanstalk once more, and up he climbed until he was above the clouds. This time the giant's wife scolded Jack roundly for running off with the gold, which meant she got onto him for stealing from them. That seems like something she should have done. But her heart being good and her life a lonely one, she finally let him in and brought him a huge cake. She does have a big heart to make a cake for a thief. Jack had no more than cut himself a slice when the castle again began to shake like an aspen leaf. Aspen is a tree. A little speckled hen started up from her nest and set to cackling, and the giant's wife grew pale. "It is my husband. Quickly, into the wood box with you," she said. Just as the lid of the wood box fell shut, in strode the giant. "Fee, fi, fo, fum," he roared. "I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread." He looked beneath the table and in all the corners. He peered into the oven, which means he peeked in there, and he put one big hand on the lid of the wood box. "Come!" cried his wife quickly, setting a big platter full of whole roast pigs at his place. "'Tis only your good supper that you smell." The giant soon fell to eating. That meant he started eating. When he had done, he amused himself with the speckled hen that laid a golden egg every time he roared, "Lay!" But at length he grew weary and snored away in his chair. Jack hopped out of the wood box and took up the little hen. He went hurrying out of the castle and down the beanstalk. That's what she gets for letting him back in her house, knowing he'd stole from her before. Now, Jack and his mother wanted for nothing in all the world. But Jack climbed the beanstalk once again, and this time when the giant fell asleep, Jack took a beautiful singing harp and went running out the door. No sooner was he outside than the harp stopped playing and called out, "Wake, my master, wake!" Wake the giant did. Fortunately, he was still clumsy with sleep, and fortunately, Jack went running like the wind. Again with stolen property. Even so, Jack's feet touched ground, and the giant was halfway down the beanstalk after his stolen goods. "Mother!" cried Jack. "Bring the hatchet!" His mother came running with a sharp hatchet, and Jack set to chopping down the beanstalk. Blow after blow Jack struck, for the beanstalk had grown a trunk as sturdy as a young oak. At last it came crashing down, and down came the wicked giant. I'm sorry, was he wicked or was Jack? This story confuses Mrs. Stink. He came down dead as a stone from that day to this. Jack's mother was so happy to have her son safely home that she cooked a fine meal almost big enough for a giant to eat. Jack did full justice to his share, and while he did, the little hen clucked merrily and the little harp played joyfully. And it doesn't, but it should say, the end. And I hope that you enjoyed that story, and you can tell by Mrs. Steen's expressions that perhaps the way she understood the story as a child changed as she got older, which is a good reason that we should probably continue to read the books that we read as children, because it's never too many times to read a good book. Anyway, I hope that you are enjoying your lessons, but also I hope you're doing some reading on your own just to be able to escape to many beautiful places while you are in solitude in your home, but also stop for a little while and spend some time with your family and spend some time getting to know them and being able to enjoy being able to get stuck together for a little while, because I can promise you that this is probably a once in a lifetime situation. Make the most of it. Goodbye. See y'all later.